A movie starring John Travolta and Miley Cyrus as best friends sounds like a recipe for success. Hello there and welcome to Magic by Design. Destiny calls this week as we review Disney's 48th animated feature Bolt, first released in 2008. My name is Ken and I am joined as always by my co-host / brother Garrett. Gar, how are you?
You got the limo out front?
Ooh,
Hottest style, every shoe, every color. That turned 15 this week, actually, so to tie it in with the Miley Cyrus verse.
Yeah, this is right around when Miley Cyrus was at the height of her Disney contract, when she was a Disney slave teen.
Yeah, so this was 2008, so this was 2 years into the Hannah Montana run, which is quite disappointing that there's a Miley Cyrus father figure in this film. Not even father, the father of Miley Cyrus's character, who I don't believe is voiced by Billy Ray. So what's even the point?
It's a lost opportunity. They could have had a remix of Achy Breaky Heart in the soundtrack.
Was that ever in Hannah Montana?
No.
Really?
Nope.
Maybe it feels like something they should have put in there at some stage.
Maybe it doesn't belong to him.
Maybe it doesn't. But Disney have money. They can license the rights to Achy Breaky Heart for their biggest teen franchise.
Yeah, I suppose they could. But the thing that always strikes me about Hannah Montana is how old the brother was in real life.
Yeah, he's like 40-something now, which means 15 years ago he would have been in his mid-20s, and by the end of the run he would have been in his 30s. So
yeah, I always found that very strange. He made most of his money in acting playing a teen in his 30s.
Which... goals, to be fair. Like, I still want to either be at this stage I'm 28, so I'm probably too old to be the star in a Disney show, so I want to be like the weird teacher in a Disney show, or the awkward neighbor, or something like that. I can do that while I write the show, of course, or Power Ranger, but I'm also aging out of Power Rangers as well, Ken, so I'd have to be like the Bulk and Skull figure in Power Rangers now instead of just the Power Ranger.
You could do a Jump Street scenario where you are a foreign exchange student who ends up being a narc who's a cop.
Yeah, it's like, this guy is like 30. It's like, no, he's not. He's 25.
Is that 5 o'clock shadow?
No, I'm just maturing at a rate faster than the average teenager.
Skateboards, am I right, dudes?
Was there a Hannah Montana movie? I feel like there was.
There was.
So, which means if we ever extend this podcast all the way to Disney Channel exclusive movies, we will have to review it someday.
That was a theatrical release, Gar.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, good God. Like High School Musical 3, which is cashing in on the craze long after it was successful.
Yeah.
That film still made money, though, probably.
It still made money, but I'm like, why not do it for the second one?
Yeah.
Anyway, Bolt, Gar.
Yeah, Bolt, dogs. We got the 101 Dalmatians. We got Lilo and Stitch, which really is a film about a dog, even though it doesn't have a dog in it.
Lady and the Tramp.
Lady and the Tramp, that's a famous dog movie.
I think about 40% of these animated features feature dogs that talk.
So now we're in Bolt with John Travolta. What a weird casting choice.
Yeah, but it works.
It does, he's very good.
But I think I prefer John Travolta when I can't see his face.
Wow, heavy shot at John Travolta. I have no particular strong feelings toward John Travolta.
He was heavy on the old Scientology for a while, wasn't he?
Aren't we all? Then the aliens don't come and take us, and then we're like, oh, we have to get out of the cult, except we don't get out of the cult.
We got the date wrong. It's going to be next year.
How many, like, dumbass... Like, QAnon is doing the same thing, where there's a new date where everything's going to happen every 2 months. Remember, like, the 2012 Mayan apocalypse? It's like, well, no, we got the date wrong. It's this one. And then that day goes by and there's not an apocalypse. And we're like, actually, we misread the calendar, and it's another 2 years down the line. Same thing with Scientology, and that the aliens are going to come back and save us, or whatever the Scientology thing is. I haven't read up enough about it. Those dates keep on moving. When do these people just give up?
They don't care.
That's
the answer
the sad
is they
part.
don't.
They can just live in
You
this
think it's the
delusion.
same people?
Probably. What's with us being so susceptible to this bullshit? Why does it happen? Why are we so stupid?
I think we want to believe these things because it makes sense of things that don't make sense.
Is it the X-Files fault? Where the phrase was, I want to believe? And then everyone was like, yeah, I want to believe.
It's on Disney Plus now. You've been watching it.
Though, like, if you go back through the history of time, which the X-Files, by the way, aggressively fine, occasionally very good, usually mediocre. There's my one-sentence review of the X-Files. But you go back, like, we are very susceptible to believing that things that aren't real are real. When you look at Norse mythology, Greek mythology, Roman mythology, obviously Christianity, and every religious faith in the history of religious faiths, we are very easily led to believe something that is not real is in fact real, because it will somehow make our lives easier and give us meaning and purpose, which to a degree I understand, because otherwise life is difficult to find meaning and purpose, and you'll just live a life of depression and sadness. But also, why are we always such fools?
I don't know.
Why can we just not accept that these fake things are fake?
I think it helps us swallow the existential dread.
And the worst part is, like, there are conspiracy theories in the world, but they're usually uncovered. And, like, usually most corruption kind of happens out in the open anyway, and you can see it visibly happen. And then people are like, but we have this deep conspiracy theory that exposes the corruption. It's like, well, this senator received this money from this lobbying group, and then his vote was directly impacted by that money he received. Why aren't you mad about that? That's, like, open corruption that can be tracked. And people are like, Whereas the conspiracy theories,
If that senator was a lizard man, then we're talking.
Oh, the world is stupid. I'm sick of how stupid it is. It's just like the loudest people and the dumbest people continually are heard the most and then end up being rewarded. Because, of course, the Snyder Cut came out, Ken, which it's fine. One sentence review of the Snyder Cut. It's fine. It's neither particularly better or worse than the original film. It's just a different flavour of the original film. And it's fine. But now, Ken, the dumbasses want their release. Ken gets upset because I said a mean word that he'll have to...
You've said several mean words already. I'm going to have to censor you several times.
Yeah. These stupid people are like, release the Snyderverse. Even though he's like said what happens. There's not going to be any like drama anymore. He said that like Lois Lane dies. He said that Superman turns into a bad guy. He said that then all the Justice League die. He said that Flash goes in time and tells Batman Lois is the key, which is like, if you have a one sentence thing you can tell Batman to save the world, I'd be like, don't let Lois die, Superman will snap. Don't let Lois die, not just Lois Lane is the key. Like, that's why are you speaking in riddles, Flash? You want to save the universe.
You know
here.
what happens, just say it.
Yeah, say it outright. Tell him, it's like, I have like 10 seconds to tell you everything, so I'm going to tell you something cryptic. Makes no sense. But like, we know that Batman goes back, sacrifices himself for Lois, Superman survives, the Darkseid loses. He's told us the plot of these films. Why do you want to see them so badly? Shut up. Go away. You got your Snyder Cut. You got what you asked for. Because this is typical with toxic fandom, Ken, because they are defined. They define themselves by not what they are for, but rather what they are against. They're against Warner Brothers. They have to fight Warner Brothers to get the justice for the Zack Snyder Cut. And then they got it. And in typical fashion, Ken, they're not happy. Because these people are never happy. Because they only live to be angry. And they're fueled by that anger. And they will inevitably find something else to be angry about. I'm sick of it. Bolt. Dogs.
Yeah, I'm sure that Warner Brothers are going to bend and spend billions of dollars based on the feedback of some bros on the internet.
But they did it already, Ken. That's the problem.
Yeah,
but you give these people an inch.
You can't reward them, Gar. As you said, give an inch, take a mile scenario. But yes, Bolt, Gar. You know what? I remember putting this on at home.
Ken just pivot. I was like, how many different rants about different things can I get into the first 10 minutes of this podcast?
Much like Bolt, I need to put a leash on you, Gar.
Ken is like the agent in Bolt. And he's just going to put a pin in that one.
Put a pin in that. Just put a pin. We're going to come back to it, I promise, Gar. But we need to do a podcast, okay?
Okay.
I remember putting this on at home, somewhat under duress. I had fallen out of love with Disney for some years since
gun to your head. It's like, watch Bolt. Watch Bolt.
Since Lilo and Stitch, I didn't have a lot of interest in Disney animation, what they were producing, and I was convinced that they'd lost their way creatively.
Before you continue, Ken, all right, we've watched the films. Do you stand by that stance?
No. I think you hit the nail on the head in recent episodes. I think I was afraid of the 3D transition.
Even though Pixar existed.
In fairness, it has been fairly rocky the last few episodes, but Bolt really shows that they got their game together.
Yeah, when you watch the Chicken Little to Meet the Robinsons to Bolt as a little precursor to the Disney Revival trilogy, and you look at the growth of both their storytelling and their quality of 3D animation, it's like, fair enough, it's Pixar, but because they bought Pixar, and Pixar are like, we'll just fix you too. But you can see it. You can see from Chicken Little, which is because we will all agree, Home on the Range, low point in the history of Disney animation, maybe. Actually, no, it's probably still Aristocats or Three Caballeros. Home on the Range isn't...
Black Cauldron.
No, Black Cauldron is perfectly in the middle mediocre. You leave Black Cauldron alone. But then you get those three films where you begin to see them start working it out again and getting some of that Disney magic back.
Yeah, they're figuring out the technology, they're getting new voices to tell stories. Originally, this film was going to be titled American Dog and was to be written and directed by Chris Sanders. Eventually, Sanders was removed from the project and replaced by Chris Williams and Byron Howard, who shaped the movie we have today. In 2006, after becoming Chief Creative Officer at Disney Animation, John Lasseter, along with other directors from Pixar and Disney, attended 2 screenings of the film and gave Sanders notes to improve the story. According to Lasseter, Sanders was replaced because he resisted some changes that Lasseter and other directors wanted. Lasseter said at the time that Chris Sanders is extremely talented, but he couldn't take it to the place it had to be. After Sanders left, the original title was removed and the animation team was was told to complete the film in 18 months instead of the usual 4-year timeline for a computer-generated feature. No small feat, and it's remarkable that this film turned out as well as it did. And we're also seeing some evidence of a toxic work culture at Disney Animation, Gar. It's always present to some extent, but the cracks are showing, people being removed for standing up for their own, vision for a film.
Very much the brand rules all here. And it goes, as we say, all the way back to like Beauty and the Beast, where it's like, we're throwing this film out and you start it again and get it out the door in a year. And they did it. And they did the same thing, I think, with, was it Pocahontas? That they threw it all out and started again? But multiple times over the history of Disney, whether it's John Lasseter or Jeffrey Katzenberg, it's just like...
Or Walt Disney himself.
Or Walt Disney himself. He's like, let's start again. And you get people like Chris Sanders, who, by the way, left Disney and 2 years later released How to Train Your Dragon to DreamWorks, which is still a film that's better than most Disney films, or at least particularly during this era. But you do look at the like Chris Williams would go on to direct Big Hero 6 and direct Moana, and Byron Howard, who also co-directed this, would go on to direct Tangled, which of course is a banger, and Zootopia. So the creative, this is where we're seeing not only the seeds of in the films of the Disney revival, but the creative talent are the same people who would go on to make many of the Disney revival films.
But I think the reason that it kept happening was, more often than not, that approach paid off. It ended up having a good result at the end, so it perpetuated this culture that this is what works.
They were rewarded for their toxic work environment, which is always the worst part. It's like when the toxic work environment succeeds, and then you're like, well, you're stuck in that toxic work environment, aren't you? Because no one in like senior management is going to go like, oh, this isn't working, let's fix it, because that would take effort and usually the more important part, money. So instead they're like, let's sustain this toxic work environment because it's not hurting our bottom line.
Yeah, you have a bunch of people with pride who care about what they do, so they'll make it work. I see it in work all the time. A bunch of young people who, like, if they let the plates fall, there'd be a lot of damage, but they don't. They get it over the line at their own cost. There's always a human cost, but people don't see that. And then the cracks show. So I'm beginning to see why John Lasseter was eventually ousted. I know there was some talk about unwanted advances, unwanted hugs, but I think overall he seemed like a kind of guy who was like, my vision is the only vision, much like kind of like Walt Disney. And if you disagree with it, you're out.
But it's like you saw Chris Sanders made the best Disney film ever. He made Lilo and Stitch. He really should get a little bit of rope. But you go all the way back to like Menken and co-writer
Howard Ashman.
Howard Ashman, yes, indeed. The same thing happened with them all the time. Like going back into... And
they tried to fire him a few times.
And that was during an era of Disney where they were not successful. And Howard Ashman is just like, let me make my movies. And they keep interfering and like borderline ousting him every time. So, and like it goes to the creative auteurs. You see the same thing with like Disney and the Marvel films. Where it's like Edgar Wright is like, I want to make my Ant-Man film. It's like, why did you hire me to make an Ant-Man film if you're not going to let me make my Ant-Man film? And eventually they part ways due to creative differences. It's not the first time and it won't be the last time that happens in the history of Disney. Same with people that want money. It's like, Don Cheadle, you're in.
And Lord and Miller with Solo as well, another prime example.
Yeah, and those were two guys that were considered like, the Hollywood hot boys who could never do anything wrong. And
Hollywood hot boys.
Damn right. Who made 21 Jump Street good, made like all the Lego films good. The go-to guys in Hollywood at the moment to write something nerd related that's good, and still they get ousted. So it's like, it's the Disney way. It's like, we have focus tested this and the focus group says no, so your creative vision, no matter how and realistically the history of focus groups produce things that are boring and like mass appeal and have no specific like intent or emotion or humor. It's like whatever works for the largest audience is the one we'll go with, and usually that thing is a personalityless mess. But somehow Disney make it work. Maybe it's the likes of Chris Williams and Byron Howard that we should be putting on a pedestal for being able to still produce things that are creatively interesting in this kind of work environment.
Bolt was released in the United States in November 2008, grossing $310 million against a budget of $150 million. Despite the film's relatively small box office success, it was well received with strong critical reception. Critics praised the exciting action, heartwarming themes, and subtle character-based comedy. Others saw similarities with The Truman Show. I would say there's a more analogous animated film in Toy Story.
Yes, because that was my biggest note, that like Bolt is Buzz Lightyear.
Yes.
In everywhere. Bolt is just Buzz Lightyear. He is this delusional person who thinks he's real but is actually a fictional character. In Buzz's case, a toy. In Bolt's case, just a dog.
Yeah.
It's Buzz Lightyear. major. Yeah. It's actually interesting. Reading the critical reception, there was one thing that stood out, one character that was universally praised. Rhino.
You hate Rhino.
I hate Rhino with a deep seething passion. I hate Rhino. He's the worst part of the film by an absolute. And I wonder, is that like taste of the times, or like because there's a thing about animated characters that are meant to be obnoxious. Rhino is meant to be obnoxious, but he's also meant to be liked, and that's just a thing I cannot square in my brain. That you have this character who is repeatedly and endlessly obnoxious, and is one of the laziest, ripping off, or not ripping off, sending off nerd culture, but it's in the laziest way imaginable that he's this parody of nerds.
Basically, an obese, TV-obsessed hamster.
Yeah, it's the worst. It's just the laziest characterization of like a very large group of people that now rule the world, for better or worse. The worst part we talked already about extensively on this podcast. But I find it like that idea that this character is literally designed to be obnoxious, which is fine to have obnoxious characters in your film, but usually the obnoxious characters are not the characters you're meant to like. You're meant to dislike them because they're obnoxious, as opposed to Rhino in this film, who you're meant to like, and he's just so annoying.
And here's an interesting take, Gar. If you took him out of the film and rejigged a few things, you wouldn't miss him either.
No, I don't think any of the film is better or worse off without Rhino. Yeah, I really don't. But like, I guess the only like key plot point he serves is to let...
He saves Bolt.
Not even saves Bolt. He lets Bolt basically know he's a TV star. Or lets Mittens know that Bolt is a TV star. But there is many different ways you could get to Mittens finding out Bolt is just a TV
encounter a TV on their travels or something like that.
You really don't need Rhino to do that. And then you can take Rhino out and the rest of the plot really plays out the same way. And it's a better movie because it doesn't have a really annoying character in it. I hate Rhino. Like every line of dialogue, especially toward the end of the film, I'm just rolling my eyes at every shitty line of dialogue he says as he rolls along the screen.
I do remember there was a lot of plushies of him at the time, so perhaps it was a merchandising thing.
I mean, he feels like the most DreamWorks character, and maybe that's why I instinctively reject him here in my Disney film. I keep burying DreamWorks as if I don't like DreamWorks. I said it last week. DreamWorks, good things. Chris Sanders, as I said, went straight over to DreamWorks and made the best DreamWorks film in How to Train Your Dragon, and maybe even better film in the sequel, and a satisfying ending. But yeah, Rhino. Ugh, I don't get it. I will never get... Do you like Rhino?
I'm more indifferent to Rhino. I don't love him or I don't hate him. I think he serves his purpose, but he wouldn't be one of the things I love when I watch this film.
Yeah, because I really like the relationship between Bolt and Mittens, which I think is the core of the film and what makes the film tick and makes the film work, and that it's more of an interesting comic pairing, and Rhino is just the third wheel, literally, because he's in a hamster ball.
Yeah, and as you said, he's not really that important. We can both agree, Gar, the look of this film is very pretty. It was inspired by the paintings of Edward Hopper, who was an American surrealist, and the cinematography of Vilmos Zsigmond, who did Close Encounters of the Third Kind.
Is he a friend of Freud?
Perhaps.
Sigmund Freud.
There was a new technology developed called non-photorealistic rendering, NPR, not the radio station or radio group, was used to give the film a special visual appearance, a technique later reused in Tangled.
Yeah, and there's this the weird like 2D, they use kind of like a 2D effect in this film, and it's only occasionally where they're like sweeping through like a landscape and some of the stuff like looks 2D, and I'm like, that's an interesting choice.
Not only does it look 2D, but it also looks hand painted.
Yeah, it looks painterly.
But it's all 3D. That was a special technology that was produced for this film.
Good for them.
That was one of the things that was missing, especially with Chicken Little. All the elements were there and they were structural and functional, but they didn't blend together or blend with the surroundings. So I think they really, from the character design, the character movement, the expression, lighting, shading of actual elements, everything blended together really nicely. So you find yourself being able to focus on the story, focus on the characters and the universe, because you're not distracted by going, that doesn't look great, that doesn't look great. You know, everything worked together really nicely.
I will say, and we're on 48 now, aren't we?
Yes.
For the first time in 48 films, I actively notice sometimes that Bolt is a CG dog. And like, that obviously that's weird to say because of course Bolt is a CG dog. But like, I never like watch Meet the Robinsons and like Lewis is a CG boy. You know, I'm looking at him as like, and I think it's the eyes. There are some scenes where Bolt's eyes don't really mesh with the environment and his face just has that kind of CG look to it. And I'm like, oh.
Especially when he's doing the eyes for when he thinks he's doing the laser thing. His face contorts in a way that's not natural.
Yeah, and it's a thing that going through all the history of the 2D in 3D animation, I was never like, Ariel is a 2D animated girl. I'm just watching this Little Mermaid film. As opposed to this film where there is times where I look at Bolt and I see his face and it's like, that's a computer render right there. And it's just one that doesn't feel quite blended properly. And it's a weird thing, because I agree with you that like so much of this film looks prettier, and it's mostly set outside, which I think based on Meet the Robinsons and Chicken Little, we know they're much better at doing exterior 3D animation than they are doing interior 3D animation at this stage. So when they set the majority of the film outside, it looks better. But Bolt's face, it's something I found a little jarring.
I have a note here, Gar, on that. Bolt's characteristics are based on an amalgamation of breeds, although the designers based him mostly on the American White Shepherd. Joe Moshier, lead character designer, said that American White Shepherds have really long ears, a trait that I tried to caricature in order to allow animators to emphasize Bolt's expressiveness. But I think the fact that I think like if you were just to make him a true to life German Shepherd,
he'd be bigger.
He'd be too big. He'd look weird. So I think
they shrunk him. They hit him with the Honey I Shrunk the Kids laser.
Exactly. So I think the proportions are off, which makes the face off.
Yeah, which I think you might have nailed it. Them shrinking down that dog breed, because there's weird when Penny's hugging the Bolt at times. It's like Bolt is both far too big, but also relative to the breed of dog he's meant to be, he's still too small, and it does occasionally jar, and that's a choice that I don't think quite worked through the entire film.
I also liked that they used different types of animation in this film, all obviously still 3D generated, but they used a bit of 2D here and there, they used a bit of painterly style, so it's just a really nice looking film, and I enjoyed how bright it was and the light.
Yeah, it's set more of these films outside Disney. They look prettier, because there is some scenes where they're inside, particularly when they're showing the Bolt TV show, and there's some scenes set inside that just look similar to the Chicken Little inside the spaceship scenes, not particularly good, whereas the ones outside look very, very nice.
Very natural, yeah.
It's just very... the difference is lighting, I think. That's the only... They have not worked out how to light interior environments particularly yet, and they know very well how to light exterior environments, so...
Well, if you look at their canon, you look at The Lion King, but if you look at a lot of their films through the years, Bambi as well, a lot of them are set outside, so they have a big archive there of work that they can look at, of reference footage, all those different things. So it makes sense, and then the technology comes into it as well.
And they can just rip it off from Pixar. I'm thinking about Pixar films now. Obviously, A Bug's Life set outside, but Toy Story is set nearly entirely inside. That looks fine. Monsters Inc. mostly set inside, though I haven't watched Monsters Inc. recently. Maybe I'll bump on that if I rewatched it.
I think Toy Story, if you watched it now, it does look great, but the interiors are flat. There's no light or shade or anything like that, for the most part. It's either dark or it's bright. But I do get what you mean. It doesn't bump on you as much as Chicken Little would, for example.
Yeah.
Moving on here to the story. Chris Sanders' version of the story centered around the story of a dog named Henry, a famous TV star who one day finds himself stranded in the Nevada desert with a testy one-eyed cat and an oversized radioactive rabbit, who are themselves searching for new homes, all the while believing that he was still on television. So it's
the same story.
It's not a million miles away.
The cat is still the cat. The rabbit is replaced with a hamster. Nevada is turned into a cross-country trip, but mostly it's the same bones.
One note I had here, Gar, kids getting pets in these movies always want the crazy, problematic ones.
Yeah, isn't that what you did with your dog?
Yeah, I'm like, I want that one.
She's crazy.
With her crazy eyes. I don't want a normal, boring dog.
Your dog doesn't know how to play, so clearly your dog is crazy. Because Ken's dog, Honey, is a Chihuahua, and you'll play with her for like 2 seconds, and she'll be super engaged. Then you'll try to play with her again, and she'll be like, nah, I'm over this.
For me, the downside, though, of casting Miley Cyrus is that I can only ever hear her and not the character.
She's not in this film enough for me to really care.
Yeah. Because
she's in the film for like a decent amount at the start and a decent amount at the end, and she disappears for the vast majority of the middle of the film. So she's not integral enough to this film for me to really bump on it.
Also, Bolt is a very elaborate and expensive TV show. Each episode must conservatively cost $10 million to produce.
They're blowing up helicopters. They're like Bolt's super bark takes out like 10 cars and 20 helicopters at one stage. Also the fact that because Bolt believes it's all real, they have to do everything in one take.
And in a continuous shot, yeah.
So if you look at the start of this film where they do the big action sequences, which then they have the big reveal that it's actually a TV show. But like they do that whole car chase, they do the entire stealth sequence, they do all of that in the super bark that takes down tons of things. They do all of that in one single take, which is a very impressive filmmaking, I must say. No wonder the network is like, if this show drops in the ratings, we're cancelling it, because it must be incredibly expensive to produce Bolt.
Saying that, the scene with the explanation of why Bolt believes the show is real is amazing. Some really funny comedy there with the director, who's played by James Lipton, describing his vision and why Bolt needs to think it's real. Yeah. The TV exec is like, what are you talking about, you crazy person? I'll cancel you.
Stop talking about the dog's method acting.
That's one thing that really struck me with this film. Like, I forgot how really funny it is. I laughed a lot, and I forgot how great the dialogue is in Bolt, between the humans. Like, the characters that jump out to me are Mittens.
Who's great, by the way.
Who's she played by again? She's in Curb Your Enthusiasm. Yes, as Jeff Garland's wife. Fantastic.
She's tremendous in this film.
Also, the agent, like, he did a perfect job of sounding like a slimy agent who's only out for himself. But I think you hit the nail on the head there, Gar. The real crux of this film and the story is the relationship between Mittens and Bolt. And you'd think it would be the story of the relationship between Bolt and Penny, which is important, especially at the end. But I just think the back and forth they have, and John Travolta, I will give it to him, like, the performance is great. Like, I do hear a little bit of John Travolta. It's hard not to. But, like...
No, if you told me this was John Travolta and I didn't know it was John Travolta, I'd be like, oh, that was John Travolta?
It sounds very natural. He's a delusional Hollywood star that crashing down to earth.
Probably comes naturally.
Probably does. But Susie Essman is there to guide him, but also take him to task over his delusions.
Yeah, and has her own little story about how she's kind of like Jessie from Toy Story 2, basically, where she used to have a home, but now she's a street cat who thinks she needs to be a street cat. I'm better as an alley cat, but really she just wants a home and she wants friends and she wants stability, because don't we all?
Yeah, and she doesn't trust humans anymore because they abandoned her. One nice note I liked was that she extorts the pigeons for protection to give her food, based on the fact that she'll claw them to death otherwise, but we find out later that she's been declawed by the humans, so she was only bluffing.
Yeah, sure. Pigeons seem easily scared, though. I think you could fool pigeons. And also highly unintelligent, so... Is that racist toward pigeons? That all pigeons aren't smart? They're a dumb-looking bird. I'm sorry, pigeons. You look stupid.
Well, there's some pigeons that race. They're smart, aren't they? Or is that just instinct?
So they can just fly in a straight line. Well done.
I think for me, this is possibly the best example of the Disney Road movie. And the one thing that always gets me, though, when I watch, I've only watched this film once before, is like, it's the same with all road movies. It's a children's animation. I had to let this go. It's like, it's very unlikely they'd be able to hitchhike their way randomly in all these different ways across the country.
Ken does not. Ken is like, this is very unrealistic.
Because, like, how do they know where that house is going? Because and that's another thing that fascinates me, how Americans are able to pick up their houses and move them across the country.
Seems like a thing they shouldn't be able to do. I don't think you'd be able to do it with this house we're in right now.
Just because we have a foundation. Most American houses are made out of wood, which is terrifying.
Yeah, I think that and this is we were burying Disney's originals last week, Ken. This is a Disney original, and this is a film that feels probably closest to a Pixar film.
Yes.
In terms of like the kind of films that Pixar make.
Because it's a very...
Mostly because it's basically Toy Story.
I wrote this down. The premise is so absurd, it's delightful. This film gave us a dog doing a judo chop on a guard.
Yeah.
Like, if you're given the pitch for this film, a dog that thinks he's a superhero, but it's actually a TV show, goes on a journey to find out that he's not that, and, tries to find his place in the world. As you said, it's very analogous to Toy Story. So if you're giving the elevator pitch, it's basically a Pixar film.
Yeah. And I think a lot of the comedy works, like the dog fish out of water, dog out of wherever dog
backyard.
Houses. Yeah, we're taking him out of his environment anyway. All of that works. So when he's trying to do his superpowers and all that, they bring it all full circle in the end when he does a super bark to save the day. So there's like,
I wrote down real life superpower equals heart.
Yeah, it's like that little narrative through line that he actually does the real life superpower, and there you go, saves the day. He shows the real heart and courage at the end, even though he knows that he may not get out to save Penny. I think, this is, I wouldn't be like this is one of the best films Disney has ever made. It's not like the peak of Disney filmmaking. It's not the pinnacle of the kind of, it's not up there with Beauty and the Beast. It's not up there with The Lion King. It's not up there with Bambi. It's not up there with Sleeping Beauty. It's in that tier below it, but that tier below it has a bunch of good films too. And this, again, it's indicative of a Disney that has their creative mojo back. It's indicative of a Disney that is not chasing trends anymore. They're not a Disney that's like producing Everybody Dance Now sequences, just putting into their films. There's none of that in this film. Actually, Rhino kind of is a little bit, but for the most part, it's not a Disney that's trying to look at what DreamWorks is doing and replicate it like they did with Home on the Range and to a lesser extent Chicken Little. It's a Disney that's trying to go back to what they did well, with maybe a little bit of influence from Pixar.
I think the one thing they took took from DreamWorks in this film that they actually got right for the first time, and they've tried it in the last few films and flopped with it, is a little bit of edginess, but like still in that kind of Disney heartwarming mode. I think it's backed up by great performances, great storytelling. You know, it's not just cynical, and like I think it's the best example of using that weird humor, but in a way that's structured. It tells a good story. You know, before it was just like side gags for the sake of side gags, and there are these gags like some really funny ones, like where Bolt goes around the RV park getting food, and then Mittens drives him like, "Get out of here, cat!"
Throws a frying pan at her.
So there's some like really kind of fourth wall weird stuff in it, but like it just feels way more structured and earnest than the previous attempts.
Than say Emperor's New Groove, Ken. So are we going back to saying why Emperor's New Groove is once again bad?
I think they were trying to follow the trend with that kind of, for want of a better term, edgy comedy or edgy kind of dialogue, but they just Disneyfied it.
No, Emperor's New Groove is bad. That's what I'm getting at. Even it does the character as a jerk, goes on a hero's journey, becomes less of a jerk story, much better than Emperor's New Groove does. Mostly because Emperor's New Groove has no interest in the whole hero's journey or redemption part of it.
But I think
just the character being a jerk.
I think the key with Bolt is that he's trying to do the right thing in the first place, and the reason that he's angry or he's lashing out in the beginning is because his worldview is being altered, so that's natural, but he grows throughout the film where, you know, as you said, Cuzco starts in a place and ends in the same place.
Yeah, and really we could all learn from Bolt about having a view of the way the world is, which is shattered and revealed to be untrue, and learning from that and accepting the world that you maybe don't entirely like, but you have to deal with. It's obviously a very potent political story, is what I'm saying.
Yes, for our times that we're living in.
With all the things we, again, gave out about at the start. Well, I gave out about it at the start of this podcast.
Basically, it means that, you know, we wanted the world to be a certain way. We want it to make sense, and change is inevitable. How you react to that says a lot about you as a person, but also...
as a dog.
Yeah, as a dog. But it also has a lot to say about your future, whether you can embrace that or whether you stick in the mud. And yeah, I think it's actually very prescient for our times. I think that's a very good observation, Gar.
Yeah. Bolt is political, is what I'm saying. So you want to cancel Bolt for being political. There's some good guy, like him being terrified of styrofoam because he believes it's his kryptonite. Yeah, it's good stuff. That's and like it's really subtle because when he comes out of the packing box, it sticks to him. I thought that was just a bit of attention to detail, but that's like really a part of the story. Yeah, and Mittens uses that to try and manipulate him at one stage. It's good stuff. Again, this is a Mittens and Bolt road film that really works, and then Rhino's there too. Yeah, and then we tied up in a neat little bow with Penny at the end. A nice little ending. They all get adopted. Penny and her mother quit the show and they decide to go back to the country, and they probably have loads of money as well, though, because they were on this highly successful network TV show for what we can only assume is years and years, because I think they imply there's been like hundreds of episodes at one stage, so clearly they're loaded. And the time between when Penny picks Bolt at the pet store and the show is about 5 years, so and Bolt is still relatively young, so I'd imagine it's going for a while. Yeah, so there you go. And not like Penny's a TV star, so she can just be the Penny on the Bolt version of Big Bang Theory, where you can knock Penny. Yeah, I think overall a very enjoyable story, towing the line between modernising and pulling our Disney tropes in. There's not a huge amount to say about the music and the score here. It is notable though because it was scored by John Powell, who is more known for his work with Blue Sky films, including Robots, most of the Ice Age films, Dr. Seuss, Horton Hears a Who, the Rio films, and Ferdinand. He also worked on Happy Feet, Solo, A Star Wars Story, and How to Train Your Dragon. There you go. You finally got to the good one in the end. Which, by the way, going back to work with Chris Sanders. Yes, he's also a protege of Hans Zimmer. His How to Train Your Dragon soundtrack or score, absolutely fantastic. His best work. Incredible stuff. He did not win an Oscar for it, which is a travesty. But the How to Train Your Dragon score, off the charts, like top tier stuff. This score, pretty good. It's pretty standard. Like it's kind of an action one, and then has a kind of a schmaltzy, heartfelt country vibe, I suppose, for want of a better term. They're trying to pull in the Miley tie-in, and it works. Yeah. There's only one major song in this film. There is one that plays over the credits. It's a duet between John Travolta and Miley Cyrus. Woo. Watch the video. It's very strange because they're singing together, and John Travolta's giving it all the vibes. But like it's called Barking at the Moon. It plays during the film when they're on the road trip to establish Bolt is starting to grow, and it plays at the end to tie up the story. Again, only one song. This film is not known for its songs. It didn't really need the songs, but at the same time, would have liked the songs, wouldn't you? I would have liked the songs, but this was a good song. And this is the last one without the songs.
Yes.
We go back to the classic musical format after this, so.
Yeah, this film has quite the legacy.
Does it?
Despite the film's underperformance at the box office, Bolt is considered to have been the genesis of a renewed period of success for the studio, which is continuing to this day. This is also one of the last roles of James Lipton, most famous for hosting Inside the Actors Studio.
It's also the last film role of the Macho Man Randy Savage, Ken.
Was it?
Yeah, I think he does a Bolt short after this, but otherwise he passed away, I think, the next year. He died in 2000.
No, he died in 2011.
Did he? Oh, well, he did nothing after it then. Macho Man. He plays a thug at the start of the film, if you're watching this film. The thug that Bolt holds over the bridge is voiced by Macho Man.
Is it mean that I didn't notice? Oh yeah, Bolt holding things over bridges is hilarious.
Yes. So yeah, the Macho Man. His Bonesaw is obviously his most famous role in film, obviously, aside from being, a very famous pro wrestler for 20 years. But this was his last film role.
The film was nominated for a series of awards, such as an Academy Award for Best Animated Feature, Golden Globe for Best Animated Feature Film, and Golden Globe for Best Original Song for the soundtrack one, not for the one in the film.
Yeah, Miley. Did she perform at the Oscars?
I don't know if she did.
I'm not sure that they do it at that stage.
I remember that they did do it, but it's on and off. Some years they didn't do it. But most notably, you touched on it, Gar, original director Chris Sanders' removal from the film may likely have been the catalyst for him departing Disney for DreamWorks, resulting in How to Train Your Dragon. Now, the film was still in development, and it would likely have been made anyway. But how different could it have been, Gar?
Yeah, he basically turned it into Lilo and Stitch again, and it's a banger. So
yeah, that is a legacy for this film.
Yeah, and of course, like, I assume they had Dean DeBlois on board already for it, so they just reunited the Lilo and Stitch partnership because they said, it's like, Sanders is available, let's bring him on board, let's let him do Lilo and Stitch again, because obviously those two did Lilo and Stitch together.
But overall, Gar, I think this film has a lot of the things that make a Disney film great. I agreed it is like the pin, for want of a better term, that shows that Disney is starting to move back in the right direction in terms of storytelling. They're getting to grips with the 3D technology. This film looks great, has memorable characters who aren't just stereotypes. I know that they have generic backgrounds. Like we've seen the Buzz Lightyear story before. We've seen the
Stray Alley Cat story.
Yeah, we've seen it.
It's Tramp and Lady and the Tramp.
But I think this turns it on its head because it's a different way of seeing it.
Yes, in 3D. Literally a different way of seeing it. A whole new perspective on it, Ken, some would say. The film has heart. I think that's what I think Chicken Little lacks a little bit of heart, and it tries to have it with the relationship between the Chicken Little and his dad, but there's just too much rushed going on.
Yeah.
Meet the Robinsons tries to have a little bit of heart, but I think there's just too much timey-wimey nonsense for it to ever like settle down and have like these emotional moments. Whereas I think this film does have heart. Like the moments between Mittens and Bolt have like emotional heft. Like toward the end of the film when Mittens is like, look at our new home, which is a couple boxes, and she's very excited about the boxes, and it's a very nice little moment. And that's her being like vulnerable, and Bolt kind of like is like, no, I need to get back to my person, and she's somewhat betrayed there. And it's like the it's the third act obstacle they have to overcome. It's nothing new, but it gives the film a little bit of heart, and it's those two characters that carry the entire film from start to finish. Rhino, kick him out, and that I think that's what a lot of these Disney films have been missing. They've been missing heart, like real honest to goodness heart.
And the thing is, this film jettisons the traditional villain structure. We don't need it, and we spend a lot of time with these characters, which helps you to sit with the moment because, as you said, the third act plays out very quickly, but because of the fact that we spent so much time with these characters, and we know where Bolt is coming from, we know where Mittens is coming from the beginning of the film, it still lands. And I think that's the thing that Disney have done in the past so successfully, but they haven't done in these other films when they're like crash bang wallop. They're not giving anything time to develop or land, and this film does that.
Yeah, and you mentioned the villain. This film doesn't have a villain at all. It obviously does have a villain. It has the Green-Eyed Man, played by Malcolm McDowell, who is like the villain in Everything Known to Man, because he has that.
Or Rich Industrialist, one or the other.
Yes, he has that English, menacing English accent that Hollywood loves for villains. So there's like a fake villain, and there's the agent who's like, he's more played for gags than he is to be an actual bad guy in the film.
He gets his comeuppance in the end, but he doesn't do anything other than
complete side character. Like he's if you took him out, the film wouldn't be entirely different. He's just there for some cutting commentary on Hollywood, Ken.
And some comic relief.
So yeah, this film, they could easily have someone chasing them across the countryside or something, and they do introduce animal control for a little Act 2 action sequence. Yeah. But yeah, this film doesn't have a villain, which I think is refreshing. I'm sure there's like a version, like there's somebody in that studio who's like, this film needs someone you have to root against now, or else it doesn't work. You need a bad guy in the film, and hopefully whatever forces are like, nah, won out, which it did if you watch the film, obviously.
I think that may have been the Pixar Pixar influence, because Pixar films often don't have villains either, because like not all stories needs villains.
Yeah, it's like they're going from one place to the other. That's the story. They don't need somebody chasing them.
The story is the relationship and the journey, not like, I mean, there is built-in conflict, but that comes from the relationship, not from an outside force.
Which actually gives the film more depth, because the conflict comes from between like deeper character dynamics than it does from the green-eyed man suddenly becoming real in the real world and being this figure that chases them, but actually it's animal control all along. You know, they could have done something like that where it's like, it's Zurg, the toy Zurg in Toy Story 2.
Yeah.
Something like that, where they actually chase them across the country. But
yeah, you could definitely see them doing something like that, and I'm glad they resisted it. But overall, Bolt is a very fun watch. It's the sign of great things to come, and I really recommend, if you haven't already, to check that out.
Yeah, one of the good B-tier Disney films, the thumbs ups. And it's the best of this trilogy of pre-revival 3D animated films before we go back to 2D for a little bit.
Alright, Disney heroes, we've nearly come to the end of the show for another week. Resident musical expert Nicole is coming up in just a few moments with a song from Bolt. She's the star of the show every week, so be sure to stick around for that after we say bye-bye. New episodes of Magic by Design land every Monday, where all magical podcasts are downloaded. Stop by our website at magicbydesign.buzzsprout.com to find a full list of podcast providers. We are literally everywhere: Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music, you name it, we're on it. Garrett has been making his way through YouTube as well. We're nearly up to the modern day.
Yeah, Pocahontas went up yesterday. Hunchback of Notre Dame will go up in a little bit when we finish this podcast. I'll upload it. So there you go. Go to YouTube if that's a thing you do.
Some people do, I guess.
Well, the good thing about YouTube is they give watch time statistics, so you can actually see it's like, oh, someone actually listened to the podcast.
Yeah, a lot of people have that premium version where you can listen without keeping it open. So I imagine it becomes kind of a music player at that stage.
Do a lot of people have that? I feel like they don't. I feel some people have that, but not a lot.
Yeah, maybe I overplayed that. Do you agree with our assessment of Bolt, or are you enraged by our takes? Let us have it by joining the conversation on Facebook at facebook.com/Magic by Design Pod, on Twitter at Magic Design Pod, or on Insta at Magic by Design Pod. If you're a fan of what we're doing here and want to support the show, please do consider giving us a review on your podcast platform of choice. 5 stars, please. If you're so inclined, you can also share the podcast on your socials or recommend the show to a fellow Disney fan. If you give us a 5-star review, we will get you a Hollywood pitch.
Yeah, it'll be about aliens, of course.
Yes, of course.
That was a nice little side gag about the pigeons being like, oh, we have this big pitch for you. Like the Hollywood satire in this it's nothing you've never heard before, but it was pleasant and funny.
Yeah, so if you have an idea and you want to make it big, just give us a 5-star review and that could be the start of it.
We'll just send it an email to like sspielberg@dreamworks.com and hope for the best.
I'm sure that will work. We will be back next week at the same time, same place, with a review of Disney's 49th animated feature, The Princess and the Frog. But until then, stay safe and remember, there may be no such thing as superheroes, but you have to believe in your natural superpowers. You never know where they might take you if you just back yourself one time. I kind of adjusted a quote in the film. I made that up myself.
Oh, deep, Ken. Well done.
Quite nice. Now then, it's that time of the week again. Nicole is here with a twangy cover of Barking at the Moon from Bolt. Thanks for listening. Now, take us home, Nicole.
Hello there, Disney fans. It's me, your musical correspondent Nicole, coming to you live from my bedroom. This week, we're getting lost in New York with Bolt. The score for the movie was composed by award-winning English composer John Powell, who is known for his work on the second 3 Ice Age films, Happy Feet, Rio Ferdinand, and Solo, a Star Wars story. He is also known for scoring all the How to Train Your Dragon films for DreamWorks. The movie features 2 songs, I Thought I Lost You, a duet with Miley Cyrus and John Travolta, and Barking at the Moon, sung by Jenny Lewis from LA indie rock band Rio Kylie. Although Motorhead had a song in the film, they do not feature on either the soundtrack or in the score. Their song Dogface Boy from their Sacrifice album is in the mailroom scene where the young worker is listening to it on his headphones and inadvertently wraps Bolt up in a box that gets shipped off to New York City. I Thought I Lost You was nominated for a Golden Globe Award for Best Original Song 2009. The song was co-written by Miley Cyrus with country artist Jeffrey Steele. Weirdly, Jeffrey Steele wrote the song What Hurts the Most, which was a huge hit for German group Cascada, going back to my youth there. So this week, I'm singing Barking at the Moon. I hope you enjoy it. I have got so much to give, I swear I do. I may not have 9 lives, but this one feels brand new. Yes, I have lived a good one. I've tried to be true. There are some things I never realized till I met you. How the wind feels on my cheeks when I'm barking at the moon. There is no home like the one you've got, 'cause that home belongs to you. Woo woo, here I come. Woo woo, back to you. There is no home like the one you've got, 'cause that home belongs to you. Well, I was in trouble bad. I was so confused. I may not see in color, babe, but I sure can feel blue. I have been a lot of things. They may not all be true. My experience was so mysterious.